Are we on? Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I apologize for the previous live stream. I think something went wrong and I didn't even realize it. I was too busy with the tutorial. I'm sorry about that. So anyway, we're gonna continue with the same tutorial now. I've went like 1 hour before I realized that the connection was lost. So we're gonna just continue. I made a calculator. I just made a calculator. That was so cool. That was amazing. I loved it so much, and I'm so proud. It's just fascinating to me the logic behind programming language, like how you can just like tell through this language you can talk to the computer, like tell the computer exactly what do you want it to do. And yeah, this is what I built. Yeah, this is the calculator. Let's see, check it out. First number, let's say, I don't know, 6 minus 3 equals 3. Let's run it again. 9k and 6. Error, because that's what we wrote. So now we're gonna continue with...
like the program's smart enough to know that that's not a valid operator. So these if statements can be really powerful, and we can use them in combination with getting the user input to create
We're still on?
calculator.
Right, we're still on. Okay.
In this tutorial, I want to talk to you guys about using dictionaries in Python. Now, a dictionary is a special structure in Python which allows us to store information in what are called key value pairs. So essentially, I can just create a bunch of these different key value pairs, and then when I want to access a specific piece of information inside of the dictionary, I can just refer to it by its key. So the word dictionary is actually pretty appropriate here. If you guys are familiar with a normal dictionary, you know, in a normal dictionary, you'd have a word, and then you'd have a definition associated to that word.
Right,
so
right, yeah,
in this
yeah,
situation, the
yeah,
word would be the key. In other words, the word is what like uniquely identifies it inside of the dictionary. The value would be the actual definition. So this is going to make more sense once we start working with this, but
let's see.
I just wanted to give you guys a quick introduction. So in this tutorial, I want to create a little program that will allow...
Please guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. That's gonna help me a lot. And turn the notification also, so you can see the next videos. Thank you a lot.
Us to convert a 3-digit month name into the full month name. So I could convert, for example, like JAN to January, or I could convert MAR into March. Like I want to be able to have a program that can do that for us, and that's actually a pretty good use case for a dictionary. So we're actually going to create a dictionary, and I'm going to show you guys how we can do that. So the first thing we need to do in creating a dictionary is just give it a name. So I want to give this a specific name, so I'm just going to call this month conversions. And now I just want to set this equal to an open and closed curly bracket. So whenever we create a dictionary in Python, we're always going to want to create it inside of these open and closed curly brackets. So inside of the dictionary, now we can start defining what are called key value pairs. So I can define a key.
Wait. Where to find these? Oh, that was easy. But we forgot something. We forgot equal. No, here. Yeah. We forgot that.
And then I can give it a corresponding value.
Okay.
And the way that we can do that is just by typing out the key and then typing out the value. So in our case, we're converting 3-digit month names into the full month names. So I would want to type out, for example, JAN, and then I can type a colon, and I want to type out the value I want to associate with it. So we could say January. I could basically do this for every combination. So I could say like FEB, and this would be February. And actually, after each one of these, we're going to need to put a comma. So I could do the same for March.
You need a comma.
MAR.
here.
So essentially what I can do is I can specify an entry inside of this dictionary for each one of these. So this over here would be the key.
Okay, and
this
comma.
over here would be the value.
Sorry.
And here's one thing, is all of these keys have to be unique. So if I was to come down here and change this to JAN,
it doesn't work.
This is actually going to give us a little warning. So you can see down here it says dictionary contains duplicate keys.
Right.
That's a no-no when we're creating dictionaries. So you always want to make sure that the keys are unique. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and create one of these for each one of the months, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. All right, so I've gone ahead and created an entry for all 12 of the months. So
I'm not going to write all of them, but like
keys, and each one of those keys is associated with a different value. So this is the basics of creating a dictionary. We have a bunch of these different key value pairs, and now what we can actually do is we can access them from inside of this dictionary. So if I wanted to access a specific key or a specific value, all I have to do is come over here, and I'm actually just going to print it out onto the screen so we can see it. All I have to do is refer to the dictionary by name, so it's just called month conversions. And there's actually a bunch of different ways that I can access these month names.
Okay.
So, I could access different entries inside of this dictionary.
Okay.
The first way is just by making a open and close square bracket.
Okay.
And inside here, I can just type in one of the keys. So for example, inside here, I could type in NOV. And what this should do is it should give us back the full name of November. So when I print this out, you'll see that we get back
only January, right?
November.
Because I wrote here
so I could do the same thing for any of these. We could say like MAR, and now we should get March back. So I'm able to refer to the key.
Right.
And it's going to go into the dictionary, and it's going to give me the value that's associated to that key.
Right.
There's actually another way we could do this too. So I could say month conversions dot get, and inside of here I could also pass in the name of the key. So I could pass in DEC, and now we'll be printing out December. And what's cool about using this get function is I can actually specify a default value that I want to use if this key is not found. So there's going to be certain cases when we're dealing with dictionaries where you're going to put in a key that might not necessarily...
It didn't work. It did not work.
To a value.
It did not work.
Of the dictionary, so you'd put in an invalid key. So let's just try to do that. So I'll just put like LUV. That's not a month abbreviation. So when I try to run this, you'll see we get this none down here.
Needs to be
and in a lot of cases, you're going to want to create some sort of a default value. So if I'm in this situation where I have a key that's not mappable to any values inside of this dictionary, I can actually pass it a default value. So inside this .get function, I can make a comma, and now I can pass in like a default value to get printed out. So I can say like not a valid key. And now when I put in the invalid key, instead of saying none, it's going to go ahead and say not a valid key. So this is going to give us like a default value that we can fall back on. So these dictionaries are really awesome, and the keys over here don't have to be strings. So you could also use numbers. So for example, I could say like 0, 1, 10. Like I can put any numbers I want over here as keys.
What if I have a 1
as long as they're
and then
unique.
here
And then I
one.
can access those keys just like I normally would down here with this.
It's not working, dude.
Or with those open and close square brackets.
Get
so
one.
that's sort of the basics of using dictionaries.
January,
It's really useful to store key value pairs. And honestly, you're going to be using them a lot in Python to store different types of data.
Yeah. Cool. While loop.
In this tutorial, I want to talk to you guys about while loops in Python. Now, a while loop is basically a structure in Python which allows us to loop through and execute a block of code multiple times. So I could specify like a few different lines of code, and then I could put that code inside of a while loop, and it would basically loop through that code, executing it repeatedly until a certain condition was false. So while loops can be awesome, and there's a lot of situations in Python where we're going to want to loop through specific lines of code. So in this tutorial, I just want to show you guys the bare basics of how while loops work, And then in future tutorials, we're going to use while loops to create little games and stuff like that. So let's talk about while loops. When I create my while loop, the first thing I want to do actually is create an integer. I'm basically creating a variable that's a number, and you don't have to do this for a while loop, but just for our demonstration, I'm going to. So I'm just going to call this I.
Loop, while loop. Just give me a second. Give me a second. I need 1 minute to check something really quickly. I want to check if this live stream has no problems like the other one. Cool. Okay. Amazing. That's nice. Okay. Cool. No problem. Still on.
I want to create a while loop. So I'm basically just going to say while, and over here I want to specify a condition. And this is what's called our loop condition, or you can also refer to it as a loop guard. And basically, we are going to keep looping through the code inside of the while loop as long as this condition is true. So whatever condition I put in here, as long as it's true, we're going to keep looping through the code inside.
But you're not going to actually type the word condition. Okay.
I is less than or equal to
I
10.
Less than or equal to 10.
And now I'm going to put a colon, and I'm going to make a new line. And so anything that's below this while loop declaration and that's indented like this is going to be considered code that's inside the while loop. And so that code is going to get repeatedly executed while this condition up here is true. So I'm just going to put a very simple line of code here. We're just going to print out the value of I. And then down here, I'm going to actually increment I. So I'm going to add 1 to I. So I'm going to say I is equal to I plus 1. So basically, I'm taking this I value and I'm adding 1 to it.
Plus 1.
There's actually a shorthand that we can use in Python to do something like this, though. I could just say I plus equals 1, and that's automatically going to add 1 to I. So this is a shorthand, and you'll see people in Python using that a lot.
So plus equal.
Over here, we basically have our while loop. So I have the outline for a while loop. So we're defining this variable up here, and we're going to keep looping through the code inside the while loop as long as this condition up here.
I understand. So it's going to keep add 1 and then make the calculation. And if it's not 10, it's going to keep adding 1 until it reaches 10 eventually.
Is false. For example, if I is equal to 11, then we're not going to loop through this code anymore, and we're just going to move on. So down here, I'm actually just going to print done with loop. So this will kind of illustrate this for us. All right, so let's go ahead and run this.
Wait.
I'm just going to run
it.
And you'll see down here we get some output. So we're actually going to get numbers printed out 1 all the way down through 10. And then we're printing out done with loop. So basically what's happening is we're printing out every time we go through this loop. So initially I is equal to 1, right?
Yeah.
The first thing that Python's going to do when it gets to this while loop is it's going to check this condition. So before it does anything... Does
1 equal 10? No. So we're going to do that again. We're going to add this 1 again.
Equal to 10. And that's true. So as long as this guy is true, we're going to go through and loop through all the code inside of here.
Right.
So we're going to print out I, which has the value of 1. And then we're going to add 1 to I. So now I is going to go from 1 to 2.
And then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until we reach 10 equals I equals 10. Cool.
Condition again. So remember, I checked the condition the first time, and then I looped through all the code. Then I go back up to the top and I check it again. So I'm going to say, okay, is I less than or equal to 10? At this point, I is equal to 2. So I is less than or equal to 10. So now we're going to go through and we'll execute all this code again. So I'm going to print out I, so it's going to be 2. And I'm going to add 1 to I, so now we have 3. Then Python's going to go all the way back up to the top.
Right, and it's going to repeat until we reach 10. That is, okay,
every
understand.
Through the loop,
Cool.
Before Python does what's inside of this loop, it's going to check that condition.
Right.
And as long as the condition remains true, we're going to keep executing the code inside the loop.
Right.
Eventually, though, in this program, I is going to end up being 11. right? So on the last iteration, it's going to end up being 11.
Is
We're
11
gonna come
bigger
back
than
up here,
10?
and
Yes,
we're gonna
then
say, is
print
11
done with
less
loop
or
or
equal to
done.
10? Nope. And so since it's nope, we're going to come down here and we'll print out this done with loop line.
Right.
So that's the basics of how these while loops work. We're
Yep.
specifying a loop condition. As long as that condition's true, we'll keep executing the code inside
Understood.
of the loop. And after every execution of the loop, we're going to come back up and check the condition again. So that's how we end up with this printing
Right.
out down here.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
also
the
have it.
basics of a while loop. And
Cool.
we can use these while loops to do all sorts of things. Like while loops are very, very powerful.
Building a guessing game. Ooh.
In this tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to build a basic guessing game in Python. And in this
Okay,
guessing game,
cool.
we're actually
That
gonna
sounds
be
fun.
using all sorts of cool programming structures that we've learned up to this point in the course. So we're
Okay.
going to be using things like if statements and while
Right.
loops and variables and all these cool things in order to build this game. So the basic idea is we will specify like a secret word. So we'll have a secret word that we store inside of our program,
Okay.
and then the user can interact with the program and try to guess the secret word.
Yeah.
So what we want to be able to happen is we want the user to be able to keep guessing what the secret word is and keep typing in different responses until they get the secret word right. So
Right.
that's the basics of what this game is going to be. And now let's go ahead and create it. So the first thing we want to do is create a variable to store our secret word. So I could say secret word, and we're just going to set this equal to a secret word. So why don't we make it giraffe? That's a pretty good secret word. And now what we want to do is we want to create a variable that will store the user's response. So I want a variable that will store like all the guesses that the user makes. So
I'm gonna put
we'll
mine
call
cat.
this guess.
Because my
And
cat
we're
is
gonna
just
set it
right
equal
there.
to an empty string right now. So
And
now we
then
have the secret word, and we
guess
have a
equal.
variable to store the user's guess. And what we need to do is we need to be able to prompt the user to input the secret word. But here's the catch. What we want to happen is we want them to enter the secret word, and if they don't guess it correctly, we want to prompt them to enter it again.
Yeah,
So
you
we
don't want to
can't
finish
just
the
use
program.
a
Right.
single input statement. We
Interesting.
actually have to use something called
How are we gonna
while
do
loop.
that?
And we can use a while loop in order to continually ask the
Right.
person to
You
guess
can
the
keep
word
trying
until they
forever.
guess it correctly. So let's go ahead and create our while loop. So I'm going to say while.
While.
And after I say while, I need to specify a looping condition
Right.
or a looping guard. Basically, this is something that as long as it's true, we're going to keep looping through this loop. So basically, I want to say, I want to keep looping
Secret.
as long as the user's guess
Oh.
is not equal to
Yeah.
the secret word. So
Guess
as long as they haven't
is-
guessed the secret
sorry,
word, I'm gonna
is
keep
not
going
equal
through this
to
loop. And inside of
secret
this loop,
word.
what we're going to do is we're going to ask them to input the secret word.
Try
So I
again.
can take this guess
Print.
variable and I
Oh.
can set it equal to,
Guess
input.
equal to
and I'm just going to say
input.
enter guess. And so over here, we're
Try
basically
again.
telling the user to enter in their guess. I'm storing whatever they enter inside of this guess variable. And then what's going to happen is we're going to come back up here. We're going to check to see if the guess is equal to the secret word.
I see.
If the guess isn't equal to the secret word, then we're going to do it again. But if the guess is equal to the secret word, then we're just going to break out of this loop. And so we can come down here and we can just print out a success message. So I could say,
Yeah.
you win, because they got the secret word. So this is a very, very simple program, but this
Great.
is essentially all of the code that we need to be able to build a game like this. So
Right.
let's go ahead and play our game. We can run it and see how we did. So I'm
Oh,
gonna
sorry. Nope.
play.
Nope. Here.
And down here you can see it's prompting us to enter a guess. So I'm just going to type in some, random text. We can type in whatever we want. And as long as we're not entering that secret word, it's going to keep prompting us to enter.
Wait. Let me try. Where can I write? Car. Try again. But there's something wrong. Why I have these question mark? Interesting. And what's going on? Man. Dude. Girl. Whatever. Nope. Nope. Okay.
Different information. But if I enter in the secret word, so if I enter in draft,
Cat.
now all of a sudden the program's going to terminate and it's
Cat.
going to say, hey, you win, because we were able to guess the secret word.
No, something is wrong, dude. Something is definitely wrong in here.
So that's like a really cool way for us to be able
I don't understand what that
to do
is.
this. And we actually have a fully functional guessing game. But I think this guessing game could actually be improved quite a bit. A lot of times when we're making a guessing game, we want to set a limit. So
Oh, here. So that's it? That was it? I don't know. Hey. Incorrect. Whatever. Let's see. Just random until we cat. Cat. Great.
in other
Super.
words, I want to set
Like
a limit
that.
for the number of times that the user can try to guess the word. So
Oh.
let's say that the user has 3 tries, right? They have 3 guesses.
Can we
to
do
guess
that?
the word. And if they can't guess the
How
word
can we
after
do
3
that,
tries,
dude?
then they're going to lose the game.
Right.
But if they can guess the word inside of 3 tries, then they'll win the game, right? I
Right.
think that would be a little bit more of a fun game. So why don't we try to program that game?
Yes.
Basically, we're going to set a limit on the number of guesses that the user can have.
Okay.
In order to do this, we're going to have to create a couple more variables down here. In other words, we're going to have to store a couple more pieces of information. The first piece of information I want to keep track of is how many times the user has guessed, right? So we can just make a variable called guess count, and we'll just set this equal to 0 because initially the user won't have guessed. Down in this while loop, every time we go through the loop, I want to increment that guess count, right? So every time we've gone through this while loop, I want
Right.
to increment that count because that means
Guess
the
count
user
1,
won't have
guess count
guessed.
2,
So
3.
down here, I'm going to say guess count plus equals 1. And this is just going to add 1 to the guess count. Actually, whoops.
Yeah.
So after each iteration of this loop, we're going to go ahead and add
Plus
1
equal
to the
1.
guess count. All right, so that's the first variable that we're going to need. We're also going to want to
Right.
store another variable, and this is going to be called guess limit. And basically, this is going to tell us how many times the user can guess the word. So I'm going to
Right.
say guess limit, and we'll basically just say 3. So let's say that the user has 3 tries to guess the word, 3 strikes, and you're out. So the
3.
user, if they can't get it in 3 tries, then we're going to basically say that they lose the
How are we
game.
gonna say
And I'm
that?
also going to need one more variable here.
Right.
which we're
If
gonna
guess
call
count
out
equals
of
no.
guesses. And I'm just going to set this equal
Out.
to false initially.
Uh,
So this out of guesses variable is going to be a Boolean, and it's going to tell us whether or not the user is out of guesses. So if out of guesses is true, that means they have no more guesses, right?
Right.
They basically lost the game. And if out of guesses is false, that means that they still have some guesses left, so they can keep playing. All right, so let's use these different variables in order to make our program more functional. So the first thing I want to do is when I go through this loop, I want to check to make sure that
Interesting.
the user has more guesses,
yeah.
right? In other words, before I let the user enter a guess,
You need to
I wanna
check
to
if
see
they
haven't
have
already used
guesses
up
or
all their
not.
Guesses.
Right.
So down here, I can
Correct.
make an if statement.
So,
I can say if,
If
and inside of the condition, I want to check to see that guess count is less
guess
than
count.
guess limit. If guess count is less than guess limit, that means that they haven't guessed the total number of guesses that they have, so they have some guesses left.
Guess limit.
And if that's the case, and if that's true, then I'm going to go ahead and give them a guess, and then we'll increment the guess count. If this isn't true, in other words, if they have reached their guess limit, then I'm going to want to set out of guesses equal
Wait.
to true. Because they're
Wait. Else. Yeah. Sorry. Here. No. Here. Else. else, yeah, out of guesses equals true. We're gonna
guesses,
change
right?
it.
They have no more guesses because
Yeah.
the guess count wasn't less than the guess limit.
Right.
So that means that they're out of guesses, so they have no more guesses. So there's actually one more thing we need to do inside of this while loop. We need to add another condition onto this loop guard. So right now, we're going to keep looping as long as the guess is not equal to the secret word. But remember, if the user's out of guesses, in other words, if they've reached their guess limit, we don't want them to guess anymore. Right, so if they ran out of guesses, then we want to basically
you want to make them stop
and not give them any more guesses.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to go ahead and add another condition onto here. And I'm going to say, while they haven't guessed the secret word and they're not guesses, so it's going to be not out of guesses. Then
of guesses, right.
We're going to keep looping. So as long as they haven't guessed the word and as long as they still have some guesses left, we're going to keep
We're going to continue,
but
right.
Otherwise, we're going to break out of the loop. And so down here, we're printing out you win. But actually, when we break out of this loop, there's going to be two possible scenarios. So again,
either we're going to win or we're going to lose.
Possible ways that this loop could end, right?
Right.
Either the guess is equal to the secret word. So either the user guessed the word
or they don't have any guesses anymore. The loop's going to end.
There's two situations down here that we need to account for. So I'm going to use an if statement to figure out which is which. So I'm going to say if, and we're just going to type out of guesses.
Out of guesses.
And if the user is out of guesses, then I want to print out of you lose. So we're basically going to be like, you lost the game. Otherwise, though, if they're not out of guesses, that means
that's
that
another
guessed
if.
the word correctly. So we're just going to print
else.
All right,
Great.
so now we have all of the logic for this little guessing game.
That's exhausting, man. That's so exhausting.
I'm just going to run this program.
Oh, I have something wrong. Wait. Print great. Okay, I know. It needs to be here. Ha! Okay,
and now it's going to tell us to enter a guess.
Got it.
So why don't we enter more guesses than we have? So we're going to try to lose the game. So I'm just going to enter one guess, two guesses, and now I'm on my final guess.
You lost.
If I don't get it here, we should actually lose the game.
And
you can see it says, out of guesses, you lose. So we weren't able to guess it in the number of tries that we had. Let's run the program again, and we'll
let's say
so we'll get
first one is not, and then
we're on our last guess.
Great.
Like, okay, I can do this.
Super, I
So
won.
type in the word and bam.
Dude,
won the
I
game.
just
So
built a game in Python. Oh my god, I'm amazing. I built a calculator just a minute ago and now a game? That is so cool. I love programming, man. I love programming.
Up here, I created a few different variables.
Oof.
We created this secret word variable, and we created this guess variable.
Right.
Then, we also created some more variables. So we created this guess count.
Count and limit and
this
then
just
out
keeps
of
track
guesses.
how many times the user has guessed the word. And you
Right.
can see down here, every time we give them a guess, we're incrementing the guess count.
Right.
We also have guess limit. And guess limit is telling the program how many times the user can guess. So before I go through this while loop, the first thing I'm doing is I'm checking to see that the guess count is less than the guess limit. In other words, do they still have some guesses left? If they do, then we're going to get the input from the user.
Yeah, we got it.
We have this other variable up here called out of guesses.
Yeah.
And out of guesses is going to tell us whether or not they have some guesses left. So if this is equal to false, that means they have some guesses. If it's equal to true, however,
Then they're out of guesses. No more.
Guesses, they are done.
Right,
So we lost the game.
right.
The last thing we needed to do was specify an additional condition up here. So we are going to keep looping through the code inside of this loop as long as the conditions up here are true. So as long as they haven't guessed the word and as long as they're not out of guesses,
the loop continues.
we are going to keep looping.
Right.
And so when eventually the user does break out of this loop, there's going to be two possible situations. The first situation is that they ran
out of guesses
So we
and
wanna check
they
to see if
lose.
that's the situation. I want to check to see if they're out of guesses. If they are, we'll print out a lose message. If they're not, then they must have guessed it correctly. So,
right.
And so that is how we can use while loops and if statements and also variables in combination with each other to build a pretty
Amazing.
awesome
That's cool. That's cool. For loop.
In this tutorial, I want to talk to you guys about using for loops in Python. Now, a for loop is a special type of loop in Python which allows us to loop over different collections of items.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we'll use for loops in Python to like loop through different arrays, or we could loop over like the letters inside of a string, or we could just loop through like a series of numbers. So for loops provide a very specific purpose. And the easiest way to kind of wrap your head around why for loops are useful is just for me to show you guys a bunch of different examples. So that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Okay.
We're going to look at why for loops are awesome. So down here in my text file and my Python file, I'm going to write out a couple different for loops. So the way that we create a for loop is just by saying for. And now what I want to do is specify a variable. And this variable is going to essentially represent a different value every time we go through this for loop. And you guys will see how that works in a second. But just know that
what are you talking about, dude?
Be used on every
I really
iteration
understand
of the for
nothing.
loop, and each time it will most likely have a different value. So in our case, I'm just going to call this letter, and I'm going to say for letter in. And now what I want to do is I want to specify a collection that I want to loop over. One example of this would
What
be
is
like
that supposed to mean?
string. So I could put a string in here. I could just put like Draft Academy. And now I can just put a colon. And so basically what this is going to say is it's going to say for every letter inside of Draft Academy, I want to do something. And so down here inside of this for loop, and again, we need to indent this, we can put what we want to do with each letter. So let me just show you guys like basically what this is going to do. So I can print out letter. So I can print out this letter variable, and it's actually going to print out a different letter inside of this Draft Academy string on every single iteration of this loop. So I'm going to run this program, and down here inside of my console, you'll see that I'm basically printing out Draft Academy. So on the first iteration,
Every time you're running
I
different,
letter of Draft Academy, which was G. On the second iteration of the loop, I printed out I. Third was R. Fourth.
Yeah. We go one by one.
I'm just looping through all of the letters inside of Draft Academy.
Yeah.
So I'm saying for each letter in Draft Academy, I want to print out that letter.
Okay.
So this is kind of like how for loops can be used. We can define a variable, and that variable will change on each iteration of the loop, right? So on the first iteration of the loop, this letter variable represented a G. On the second iteration of the loop, the letter variable stored
IRAFFE.
So
yeah.
went through
Cool.
this entire string, and we were able to print out each letter. So in addition to using this with strings, we can also use this with other collections. For example, like an array. So if I created an array up here, let's just call it friends. I'm going to set this equal to a bunch of different values. So we can put like a list of our friends in here. We can say like Jim, Karen, and Kevin. Instead of saying letter, why don't we call this friend? And I could say for friend in friends. And now we'll print out the friend. So over here, I'm saying for each friend inside of this friends array, I want to print out the friend. So now we'll actually be able to print out each element inside of that array. So down here, you'll see we're printing out Jim. And then on the second iteration, we're printing out Karen, and on the third, we're printing out Kevin. So I'm able to loop through all of the values inside of the array. And just so you guys know, like you can name this variable whatever you want. So I could give this like any random name. And if I want to access
it just needs to be here and here at the same time. Yeah.
So we can loop through something like an array. We could also just loop through a series of numbers. So I could say index over here. And again, this can be anything. I'm just going to call it index. So we could say for index in range, and then in here I can pass in a number. So I could pass in like 10, for example. And down here I'm just going to print out the index. when I run this program, you guys will see that it's basically going to print out every number in the range from 0 to 10, not including 10. So
Not
starting with
including
0,
10,
it's
okay.
gonna print out 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But notice that it didn't print out 10. So it's essentially just printing out all the numbers between 0 and 10, not including 10.
Right.
You can also specify a range of numbers. So I could say, for example, like 3 and 10. And now this will print out all the numbers between 3 and 10.
Not including 10. Right.
So we'll run this program. And
3.
print out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and not 10. So whatever value you put here in this second position is not going to get included in the range. And ranges can be really useful. So for example, I could use a range to loop through an array just like we did before. So if I wanted, I could say something like for index in range. And now inside of this range, I can pass in the length of the array. So just so you guys know, if I wanted to get the length of this array, in other words, if I wanted to figure out how many elements were inside of it, I could just type out len and then inside parentheses the name of the array. And so this is gonna spit out 3 because there's 3 elements inside of here, right? Kind of makes sense. So what I can do is I can say down here inside of this range function, I can just type in len and then friends. And so what this is gonna do is it's gonna essentially give me a range between 0 and the number of friends inside of this list. So down here I could actually type out friends index, and this will allow me to access each individual friend inside of this list, just like we did before, but now I'm doing it with a range. So you can see I'm typing out Jim, Karen, and Kevin. So actually, for each iteration through this loop, it's basically going to be printing out friends 0, friends 1, and then friends 2, because in here we're passing in a 3. And remember, whatever I pass in there, it's going to range from 0 all the way up to that number, but not including that.
This is so complicated.
That's another way that we can print out all the elements in the array. And looping through something like an array is actually a very, very common use case. But like I said,
I'm so sleepy.
To loop through essentially any collection that we have. So
Dude.
we could loop through like a string. We could also loop through, something like an array. So this can be really useful, and that's sort of the basics of for loops in Python. And I also want to show you guys one more example just while we're here. So why don't we go ahead and print out a range up to 5, right? So this will just be a simple program. You can use all sorts of logic inside of these for loops. So let's say that I wanted to do something special on the first iteration of the loop. So I could say if index is equal to 0, and if the index is 0, then we know it's the first iteration of the loop. So I could do something special. I could like print out first iteration, and then otherwise we could just print like not first. So this would be an example of like maybe you want to do something on the first iteration of the loop and do something else on subsequent iterations. So if I play this, you'll see only on the first iteration is it printing this out, and otherwise it's printing out other stuff. So don't be afraid to put some complex logic inside of these for loops, because it can really make your programs more powerful.
Okay.
In this tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to build an exponent function. Now, an
Exponent function. What is that? I really have no idea what are you talking about right now. This is not working. Here? No. Not here, definitely not. Let's see. Expected these little dots were if index equals 0. Okay. What about here? Still. What is that? Let's just go out of this and continue
And
with
it's basically
dude.
going to allow us to take a certain number and raise it to a specific power. So in Python, there's actually a really easy way to do this. I could come down here and I could print, we could say like 2, and we can just do 2 multiplication signs, and I could say 3, and this is basically just going to be 2 raised to the 3rd power. So you can see here, I can just print this out and we get 8 because that's 2.
Right.
So
Right.
it's really easy to do exponents in Python, but I want to show you guys how we can use something like a for loop in order to create a function like this of our own. So we'll actually create an exponent function that will basically do this, and we'll use for loops to do it. So let's create a function. So I'm just going to say def, and now we need to give this function a name. So why don't we call it raise to power.
Oh wait.
And inside of here,
Def
I'm going to accept 2
raise
parameters. So the first parameter is going to be the base number,
to
and then the second parameter is going to be the power number. So we're going to take the base number and raise it to the power number. So over here we can just make a colon.
base num.
Now, inside of this function, we need to start writing some code. Here's the thing. Inside the function, we don't necessarily know the value of this pound number.
We
Right?
made another
For example,
mistake
if we
here.
knew that we were
Needs
just
to
trying
be
like,
underscore,
square this number or cube
underscore.
this number,
Yeah.
I could just return like base num times base num, right? That would square the number, or I could cube the number base num. So this would be like the number cubed. The problem is though, we don't know like right off the bat what this value is going to be, right? This could change. Like the user can decide that. So in order to write this function, we're actually going to need to use a for loop. And I'm going to show you guys how we can use a for loop to basically figure this out. So the first thing I want to do is create a variable, and I'm just going to call it result. And we're just going to set result equal to 1. So we're going to start this off at 1. Now I want to create a for loop. So I'm basically just going to say for. And over here, I basically want to specify like a index. So I'm going to say index in, and now I want to specify a range. And a range will basically range us through a collection of numbers. So basically, I want to multiply the base num by itself as many times as the pound num specifies, right? So over here,
Oh, I got it. I got it,
pound
dude.
num, right? And so we'll basically loop through this for loop as many times as pound num. So if pound num is 2, we'll loop through it twice. If pound num
I
is 4,
understand.
we'll loop through it
Okay,
four times. And
okay.
every time through the loop, we'll multiply base num by itself. Or actually,
Because
you'll
you
see
don't
it
know how
multiply
much it's
by
gonna
itself.
be. 5, 10,
So down
7,
here, inside
2.
this for loop, I can basically say result is equal to
Result.
result times base num. This should actually give us everything we need to take this number to a
Times
specific power.
base
So the actual
num.
like result, of doing the math is going to get stored inside of this result variable. So the first time through the loop, we're just multiplying base num by 1, right? And so now result is going to become the same value as base num. The second time through the loop, so this would be if we were squaring the number, we're basically multiplying result by base num again. So it's essentially just base num times base num. The third time through the loop, we're multiplying result times base num. So we're essentially just like cubing the number. So that's essentially what this for loop is doing for us. So the last thing I want to do is right here below this for loop, I'm just going to return the result. So we'll be able to return whatever the result of raising the number to the power was. All right, so let's come down after this function and we're just going to call it. So I'm just going to say, actually we'll print out the answer. So I'm going to say raise to power. And inside of these parentheses, remember, we can pass 2 numbers. So let's raise 3 to the second power. So we're just going to square 3 and we'll see how this works. So let's run the program. And you can see down here in the console, we're getting 9. Let's try something a little bit crazier. Let's try 3 to the 4th power. And we'll run this and we get 81. So that.
Why it's not working for me? Dude, why it's always not working for me? Only because one this little tiny mistake. And then we have another mistake. Wait a minute. For index and range, oh, what's wrong with it? Another, oh my god, these are killing me. Come on.
That's 3 to the 4th power. Let's try 2 to the 3rd power. And
2
yes,
to
that
the
makes sense.
3rd
So,
power.
our raise the power function
Yeah.
is working just as expected, and I'll just walk you guys through it one more time. So inside of this function, we're taking in 2 pieces of input.
Right.
The base number.
The base
we're
number
taking
and
in
the
a
power
So
number.
that's like
Right.
the base number is going to be taken to the power number. I'm defining a variable here called result, and result
Right.
is where we're going to store the actual result of doing the math. Now we specify this for loop, and I'm
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
saying that I want to loop through this range of numbers. When I put pownum here, it's basically going to range from 0 all the way up to, but not including the power number. So
Right.
we'll basically loop through power number of times, if that makes sense. And then every time through the loop, we're just multiplying result by base num.
Just
And then we're just
mathematics.
returning
It's
result.
exactly
So
mathematics.
that's the basics of building a power function. And obviously, like, if
So
you're
the
just
whole
trying to
thing
take
of
numbers
programming
out
is
of
like,
Python, it's really
if
easy.
you have
It
this
kinda shows you
math
internal
and logic
functions, right?
basics,
like-
you only need to learn how to express them within this language, right?
Got to work, we would have
This
to
is the whole idea.
type something out just like this.
2D list and nested
In this
loops.
tutorial, I want to
Another type of loop, dude!
Concepts in Python.
That's a
It's gonna be
lot.
pretty cool lesson. First thing I want to show you guys though are 2-dimensional lists. So down here.
How
in
much
our
time left for
Python
this?
file,
Oh,
wanna
a
create
lot.
a basic list. So I'm just gonna call this number grid.
Wait, what if we call it for today and then tomorrow we're gonna finish it all? How about that? Huh? I think it makes sense. Well, thank you for watching, guys. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button, and give me a thumbs up. That's gonna help me and encourage me to learn more. If you have any suggestions, please write them in the comments below. Thank you so much, and see you in the next